Over the weekend, there was an article published on Puck that detailed recent happenings in the wild world of Electronic Arts. They're getting bought out. Probably. News broke after negotiations fell through between EA and Comcast. Apparently, Comcast was planning on splitting NBC Universal from itself and merging the division with EA to form a new corporation. This is very similar to what happened a bit ago with Warner Bros. Being split from Time Warner and merged with Discovery. As I said, the deal didn't happen. I guess EA wanted more money or some shit, it doesn't really matter. What does matter is that EA, even now, is actively seeking out and contacting potential buyers. Now, why would they do this? Well, think about it. They haven't been having the best time lately, and they lost the rights to the FIFA name, so they got to rename it to EA Sports FC. Most of the AAA titles they've put out haven't reached sales expectations, and if you check, Battlefield 2042 has less current players than Battlefield 4. The company's in trouble. They rely solely on licensing deals and sports games, and now I guess it's time for the worst company in America of 2013 to become the former worst company of America in 2013. Does that give you some sense of pride and accomplishment? But yeah, with this failed merger, I don't have to recklessly speculate as usual of who's gonna buy EA next, because the report gives us a pretty good idea. 3 big potential buyers, all willing to acquire the essence of John Madden's Ghost. First, let's talk about what EA owns, the properties at stake. Now we got Titanfall, we got Battlefield, Command & Conquer, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Apex, Need for Speed, The Sims, Medal of Honor, Army of Two, Spore, remember Spore? SimCity, Ultima, remember Ultima? Peter Molyneux made a few games for them. Dear Avenger 2, Deer in the City, Outlaw Golf, Star Wars stuff, and the crown jewel that is Skate. And probably some other things, I don't know. So who's gonna buy it? Well, first up we got Disney. Yup, it's the House of Mouse coming in hot to teach him Goofy's moral lesson. Apparently this is the frontrunner for the acquisition. EA already produces a lot of Star Wars games, and in March 2022 they contacted Disney with the intent to make their partnership a bit more serious. Disney doesn't have a great track record when it comes to commercial success in gaming. That's why they license out their intellectual properties to different studios and publishers. That doesn't always work out so well, but EA seems to have made some good money doing this. Disney's motives are pretty simple. Brand recognition. Throw that shit in more games. If you want to buy a big publisher, you gotta get on that shit fast because the options are starting to run out. Now, I don't love this idea. I'd assume any game in production would continue as normal, but within a few years, I'd expect all the dev teams would be put on exclusively Disney-related properties. Obviously, there's already a precedent here. BioWare and DICE and Respawn already have some deep Disney ties. Well, kind of with BioWare. But yeah, I can't see Disney signing off on something like another Battlefield game unless the Magic Kingdom's a map. The other possibility is kind of worse, though. For years, there's been rumors of Disney considering spinning off ESPN into its own company. After all, it doesn't really mesh with the modern Disney landscape. Some expect Disney would spin off ESPN and then merge that with EA, solidifying its fate as an exclusively sports game publisher. Yeah, there's speculation about this, but I don't know if I really see that happening. Yes, EA gets most of its money from its sports games, and most of their traditional game franchises have shit the bed too many times to count, but this would be a really expensive buy just to turn ESPN into a game publisher. Next up, we have the one and only Apple. Oh boy. Now that's a loaded possibility right there, Apple acquiring EA. There's a lot of reasons this could happen, and a lot of reasons it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, yeah, Apple has seemingly no interest in video games unless they run on this thing. Modern Macs could easily run AAA games. They have way more power behind the hood than most people expect. But Apple just doesn't give a shit. There's no developer support. I mean, even Unreal Engine is now banned from this operating system. Of course, the first thing that comes to mind, though, is those iPhones. And sure, EA owns a lot of mobile developers, but this wouldn't justify the price tag for buying the entire company. I mean, what, would Apple just get it for Peggle 3 iPhone exclusivity? Is that worth $40 billion? The next logical possibility would be buy EA to spur this AR/VR glasses tech that they're working on. Sure, it might take a few years to pull all that off, but it's possible. Finally, the most interesting option is that Apple could be setting up to release its own game console. Again, it's not a guaranteed thing, and there's not a ton of information about this supposed console if it is real. But there have been rumors circulating that this is at least a possibility, and if Apple were genuinely trying to break into this industry, they'd have to act as fast as possible to claim up a publisher for themselves. But yeah, now we'll get there if it happens. This would be one of the biggest shakeups to the industry since Phil bought Bobby. The final potential buyer is Amazon. And this is the least interesting, but also probably the best in the long run. Amazon has a strange relationship with gaming. I mean, they own Twitch, they started their own cloud gaming platform, but Amazon's attempts to make games in-house really hasn't panned out that well. Yeah, they have New World and Lost Ark, but so many titles were cancelled and the studio head just left. But if they are serious about getting into games, acquiring an established publisher makes a lot of sense. Why spend years trying to get a studio started when you can just buy one? If this happened, I can't imagine much would change. I doubt Amazon would force Luna exclusivity for EA titles, because they don't really do that right now. There wouldn't be any need to have brand integration, just keep using those EA properties. Finally, we have the wild cards. I guess Microsoft comes to mind, but no, I don't see this happening. They're already going to have a lot of trouble getting around the SEC for the Activision deal, maybe. Into EA, that would just raise too many red flags. Now, I often see this popular theory that Sony will counter the Xbox Activision deal by acquiring EA. Technically, it's possible, but I really don't think that's gonna happen. Sony is a big company worth a pretty penny, but it's not so big that I'd expect it to outright buy a publisher as expensive as EA. The largest acquisitions in the company's history are just nowhere close to that 30 or 40 billion EA will likely cost. They tend to spend 10 to 20 times less on even their largest buys. There's not always a precedent for acquisitions, but Sony usually targets individual developers rather than publishers, and it's always with studios it has strong relationships with. EA has been far more Xbox-centric for the past few years, so I'm gonna say no on this one. And I don't think Nintendo knows who EA is. Google doesn't give a shit about games after Stadia failed, and Tencent would be blocked by the US government. I guess Facebook could, but that's so fucking horrifying, I don't even want to put the idea out there. Maybe they'll just merge with Embracer. That would be pretty funny. I completely expect EA to sell it to somebody at some point. Seems all the big publishers are finding out that if you continue making garbage decisions for decades, it eventually does bite you in the ass. But even with all the shit EA does, I do admit it would be a shame to see the company forced to make exclusively sports games or exclusively Disney properties or Peggle exclusively for iPhones. And if Amazon buys them, who gives a shit? I mean, what, you get free shipping on Skate 4? EA's already killed almost every property and studio it had. There's not a ton left to the company. If I had to guess, I'm gonna say they go with Disney. It's the only company here that EA has an active relationship with, and as far as we know, Disney has the most incentive to acquire a publisher. I guess no matter who buys them though, they're probably not gonna make Spore 2.